Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Wherever you are in the world today, I hope that you are doing great. Hope that all is blessing for you. And most importantly, my friends, I hope that you are in good health. Once again, welcome to the Common Sense channel. On this channel, my friends, we get to talk about those things that people know, that people have thought about, but don't often have the time to discuss. These, my friends, are the things we discuss here on the Common Sense channel. So once again, welcome to the Common Sense channel. Today I want to talk to you about freedom of speech. And I think the idea of freedom of speech is the fundamental, if not the bedrock, of American society / culture. And you can also trace the historical legacy of freedom of speech embedded in the First Amendment of the Constitution. So, I want to give you some historical narrative of events that led to the First Amendment, aka freedom of speech. And you know, every country in the world kind of model after this. And this was a landmark ruling. And the year was 1735. When America, this great country, was still under colonial rule. It was a case that came to the court, the British court, between a publisher named John Peter Zenger. He was a publisher. And he had a little dirt on the governor of New York. Don't know what it was. History didn't specifically say what it was, because I guess everything was sealed in the court. But he had something on the governor of New York. The governor was William Cosby. So he wanted to publish his finding on the governor, and the case went to court. The charges against him was sadistic libel. That's what the charges was. And he hired a lawyer. So this case would go on, my friend, to set the stage for what we know now today as freedom of the press. Because at the end of that case, it was determined that the truth was the one that was actually on trial, not Mr. Zenger himself, but the truth. And towards the end of the case, the trial, Mr. Zenger, John Peter Zenger, was found not guilty. So why am I saying this and why this is relevant? It's because even though freedom of speech is your right to say and speak and talk about things freely without fear or favor, without thinking someone is going to come after you or someone is going to retaliate against you, someone is going to harm you because of what you say, no matter how bad your speech is. If you're going to say something about someone, because someone can sue you for libel, yes, but if you're going to say something about someone or write something about someone in the form of publishing, you must make sure that whatever it is that you're saying, whatever it is that you're writing about that person, that thing is the fact, is truthful, there's truth behind it, and that you have all the evidence. And in the case of Mr. John Peter Zenger in the state of New York, he was acquitted because he had the truth. And what that did was it set a precedent. And it was also a landmark ruling because what it did, it eventually laid the foundation for the First Amendment that we all enjoy today in this country. So today we have similar situations. There are still liable laws on the books that you can't just say, and there are defamation of character. There are numerous cases out there or statutes that are out there that can protect someone. If you can't just go out and say anything about anyone without having proof, without having facts, to back your claim. So the reason why I'm saying is to say that whatever you want to say about anyone, about anything, or even publish something about anyone or anything, you have to have the facts on your side. And that's why, for me, most of the time when I come on my show, I often make sure I do, like if I'm talking about topic like this, I want to make sure I do enough like research and understand this before I can even come and say this. But that's just a historical background. So I'm going to talk about some historical figures that actually use freedom of speech in this country very adequately, very effectively, very efficiently, and we're not afraid to say what they think. And I think in the past few years, we've seen how freedom of speech has been, one way or the other, hindered or a little bit uh, eroded, especially, my friends, during COVID-19. Because I used to be one of those people. I used to go on a local radio station here in the state that I live in, and I would just talk, and I was talking about COVID-19. You know, as a natural skeptic, I've always been the kind of person that look at things differently. So if everyone is agreeing on something, I'm always taking the opposite side. And over and over and over, this has always worked for me because I look at things differently. So when someone says something about someone, I don't just agree without seeing it first. I have to see it. I have to verify. And I think that's what most of us supposed to do. We're supposed to be critical thinkers. So if you're critical thinkers, or someone that speak your mind, someone that's very vocal, the only thing that guarantees you're right, in my own views, and I think in the views of many people who are free speech lovers or who are First Amendment lovers, the only thing that guarantee you is the First Amendment, that guarantee your rights to be able to say what you feel like, what's on your chest, what's on your mind. And for people who are not born to this country, or people who are not living in America, if you are outside of this country, you wouldn't understand like how Americans react and how they behave and how they talk and how they think and how they express themselves, until you are here. And there's one movie, my friends, that I think make the case very clear to anyone that are visiting this country or have migrated to this country the first time as far as cultural shock is concerned. And this movie, my friend, is Coming to America. And if you can remember in the movie, Akim, when he arrived in Queens, you understand, and he heard those people using profanity, he was so shocked. He was like, what? Are these people really talking like that? And then there was a scene in the movie where he also started talking like that too. He also started using profanity. And even when he went to the barber shop, he saw people talking like that. He saw you guys like this. So he was shocked to see that people in this country express themselves like that. And they do it freely. This is not new. I'm going to throw some historical figure that actually mastered this. You understand? So why am I saying this? I'm saying this to say the First Amendment, which guarantee your right to freedom of speech, is also cultural. It's the culture of this country. And because it's a culture of this country, it's part of the fabric of the people of this country. Americans are the only people that will look at you. If you don't look good, he'll tell you you don't look good. If you smell, they'll tell you you smell. If your breath smells bad, they'll tell you your breath smells bad. In other culture, they wouldn't want to do that. You understand? Because they think you feel bad. You understand that if I just come out openly and tell you that your breath smell or you don't, you smell bad. But in this country, it's just the way they express themselves. The way they see it is how they tell you. So, and this has been the way. This has been this way from the beginning of time. So let's look at historical event in this country that we can pinpoint on to say, yes, this has always been the case in this country, and I don't think it's going anywhere. The First Amendment will be the bedrock of this country until eternity. So, during there was an event in Boston, Massachusetts. There were few Americans, ordinary American, everyday Americans. They were struggling in Boston, Massachusetts. They were paying taxes, but they were not being represented right. And they were feeling the pain. So they took to the street and they were protesting. And there was a brother named Crispus Attucks. He saw them protesting, just like typical black American. He joined them in the protest, not knowing that that would be his last day. So that event is called the Boston Massacre. And that would go on to set the stage for what became the American Revolution. So why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up to tell you that there are blood that was shared for the right to speak your mind to anyone or anything that oppress you. And when those patriots got on the street in Boston, Massachusetts, the British crown or the colonial masters, Great Britain at that time, did not expect them to speak their mind the way they did. And the retribution, the reaction was so forceful that it took life of Crispus Attucks, the first black man to die. And he died because of the First Amendment, the right to speak your mind, even at the point of a gun. And my friends, that, my friends, is the American spirit. No one, no entity, no power can take that away from us. Can take that. You can be as powerful as whatever you want to be. You cannot take away that right, because there are patriots that laid their lives speaking against tyranny, speaking against evil. The right to self-determination is also the right to free speech of freedom of speech, which is embedded in the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I'm saying this to say that there are a lot of people in our world today, and no better time this was prevalent was during the COVID-19 time. I remember people going on TV, they were told not to even use the word itself. Most things were censored. There were people that couldn't even talk, they couldn't even express the way they feel about what was happening. You know, I was one of them. Even though I had empathy, I've always had empathy about the people around me, my loved ones, even those I don't really know. But I have always gonna have empathy. But even with that wouldn't stop you. That should never stop you from saying the things that you think, the way you feel about certain things, the way you feel about your life in general, and the way you feel about the lives of others that you care about. You understand? And since the right to say what you want to say, freedom of speech, the First Amendment, there are figures in history that understood this. And I'm going to start by saying Marcus Garvey. When Marcus Garvey, most people don't know this, Marcus Garvey traveled to many countries in the world before he came to this country. He went to Costa Rica. He traveled throughout South America when he founded a Negro advancement and the Negro improvement, something, I think it's NI. Anyway, when he founded his organization, you understand? I'm going to get it. It's going to come to me. I think it's Universal Negro Improvement Association. That's what it's called. When Marcus Garvey founded that organization in Jamaica, he wasn't getting as much attention as he wanted it to go. So he traveled to South America. He traveled throughout South America, even worked there doing journalism, writing for newspapers and stuff like that. He also did some work in England too. He went to England and even taught there too in England. But something came over Marcus Garvey. And in 1916, he came to the United States. And he went to a place called Harlem. I remember when I used to live in New York, I went all up on that side, man. I talked to people down there that knew the whole story. You know, how they tell me everything about Marcus Garvey when he was in Harlem. Me and my Black American brothers and sisters up there told me. He went up there. They even showed me the house where he stayed when he was up there. But one thing the great Marcus Garvey discovered, that in this country, there was something called the First Amendment. And that you could say what you want to say. So the reason why I brought up Marcus Garvey, but before Marcus Garvey, there were people like W. Du Bois, there were individuals like Booker T. Washington, there were individuals like Edward Bladin, there were individuals like Henry Hartland Garnett, and there are countless numbers of individuals like David Walker, countless numbers of individuals. Some of these people were ministers, they were preachers, they were clergymen, they were bishop, you know, and they spoke up for Black people. You understand? In fact, they understood in their own way that in this country You're allowed to say what you think. You're allowed to say how you feel. You're allowed to express yourself any way you think necessary, as long as whatever you're saying is not insightful. You're good. And these individuals that I listed will go on to lay the foundation, because they were talking about black liberation, black freedom, black people being able to do certain things that they were not allowed to do. They were promoting black awakening, which we're talking about time that would be prohibited by all circumstances. But these individuals were brave enough. And that's why I think when good people don't speak about injustice, about wrongdoing on people who are weak, people who are vulnerable, people who do not have the power to speak for themselves. When good people and righteous people don't do that, evil wins. Evil people wins. And that's the reason why the First Amendment is very, very crucial in all time, in all circumstances, regardless of what's happening in our society, in our world. You, my friend, must always stand on principles. And one of those principles are to speak up, speak out whenever wrong are happening, whenever someone are being people in another people, another race of people, another gender of people, another ethnicity of people, whatever they are, the religion of people are being abused, always stand up and speak out or speak up for them. And because of what this individual did, an individual like Marcus Garvey, W. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, and all the others that I named, Edward Bladlin, and George Patman, all these people that spoke out, because of what they did, laid the foundation for the two individuals. And I mean, it's more than them, but it's more than those two, but like the most famous ones, laid the foundation for Martin Luther King Jr. But Martin Luther King Jr. was so eloquent, was so adequate, was so efficient in the way he used the First Amendment. He was able to channel all of the pain and suffering of a people using the Second Amendment to speak to the hearts and minds of humanity. Martin Luther King just didn't speak about the suffering of black people in America, using again the First Amendment, freedom of speech. He spoke against injustice everywhere. He says injustice in one place is injustice everywhere. That's his quote. And then we see come along individual like Malcolm X would use the same method, would use the same amendment that their ancestor used to speak against injustice. You understand? And then Stokely Carmichael, you would never hear if you would never hear of the phrase Black Power if it wasn't for Stokely Carmichael. Stokely Carmichael was the one that coined the term Black Power. And at the end of his life, towards the end of his life, not towards the end of his life, because he was constantly harassed. I don't know if that will ever come happen in this country, but who knows? But he had to leave this country and went to, I think, Ghana. Yes, where he went to. You understand? I'm saying all this to say, in as much as in this country, the country promotes freedom of speech in the form of the First Amendment, which is guaranteed by the First Amendment. But over and over, we've seen there's been like individual trying to hold back, to have a stronghold on that right. But over and over, in every step of the way, we've seen over and over that the righteous has always won. You know, even those speech that you really don't like, even the ones you think that are bad speech, it's okay. At least that person is getting things off their chest. And the Supreme Court has also clarified this. As long as it's not deforming anyone, as long as it's not inciting violence, you are allowed to say them. You're allowed to say how you feel about anything, any people, any places in this country, as long as you're not inciting violence. But the thing is, what, and this has always been my fear too, like, what event will make you or will make any of us to not have that rights again, where we're not able to freely express ourselves in ways that we feel are, you know, are not gonna, we're not gonna be retaliated at, or we're not gonna be in fear of our lives. So that's the question, you know, and I don't know if that time is here or that time will be in the near future or maybe not too distant future. But what I do know based on what I see now is that the only thing that will start to erode some of the the rights on freedom of speech, or maybe a little bit of the First Amendment, would be technology. And I think technology, if technology is not able to curtail some of the right or your right to uh, uh, freedom of speech, maybe it might hinder. But again, even if technology hinders free speech or freedom of speech or the First Amendment, there's always going to be way. People are going to find ways to bypass. Because we've seen in countries where people don't have the right to freely express themselves or do certain or say certain things in those countries, but yet there are people that still find a way to do so. So I think it's just the human spirit. And I think America has to lead in this process. America has to lead in the process, in the maintaining of freedom of speech. If America ever gives up on their right to free speech in this country, the rest of the world is doomed. That's what I think. And even though we saw that during COVID-19 time, we saw a lot of people, even religious houses. That was the one that really baffled me a lot because, I mean, imagine the government coming and telling the church to shut the door down, to shut the doors down. And none of these people ever stood up and say, why? Why? You know? And they all cave. They all cave to that. None of these people could even talk about the impact from an honest standpoint. Even those people that try to talk about COV, from a scientific perspective, they were also shut down. So I don't know if there's ever going to be an event in this country that would ever have that kind of impact or influence on the First Amendment than COVID-19. I don't know. I don't know. But religious people kind of like made me thought about them in so many ways. I can say the reason why I think most of them were compromised, and I think it that event in history, COV event, kind of weakened the church. From that time, the church never been the same. Religious houses never been the same, and I don't think it's ever going to be the same after that, because why? They compromise. I was expecting them to stand up and say, no, we believe in the God that we serve, and we believe that the God that we serve is more powerful to heal any diseases, whatever it is out there. That God can heal that disease. But they were the first to run to the hill. And then people like us, we were like, what's wrong with you? You know, why are you even taking that? Why are you forced to shut down your place? You are too compromised. Now you can't say nothing. Because if your Lord and Savior is that powerful, you should be able to stand up to these people and say, we're not closing our doors. You know, I'm just saying this to say that these people should have set a precedent. Because let me tell you, history is never going to remember them. I mean, religious houses, religious people, history will never remember you. Because when the time you should have stood up and used your First Amendment, you did not do that. I mean, people don't tell you to your face, but on the Common Sense channel, we say that here. So it was that time for me. I look at you and say, religious people are nothing but a second arm of the government because of how you are quick to fall. You are quick to accept defeat without challenging anything. And the spirit of this country does not operate that way as far as the First Amendment is concerned. You understand? Another person in history that mastered the First Amendment to the boom was John Brown. John Brown believed so much in the First Amendment that he was willing to take action, because once you start speaking about things, the next thing that you lead to is the Second Amendment. And that's exactly what John Brown did. Because John Brown thought that he was just speaking and nothing was being done about the greatest sin of this country, slavery. And anyone that studied John Brown, he was almost like a prophet, because whatever he said before they pulled the chair underneath his 2 feet, or let me just say, before they hung him, he laid curse to America. Yes, he laid curse to America. And few years after his death, the American Civil War started. So all those people that believe in the First Amendment, do not allow anyone, my friends, scare you, because that's not the spirit of your ancestors. People wonder why Donald Trump is what he is, why Donald Trump talks the way he talks. Donald Trump can be standing amongst 20, 30, 40 world leaders and still says what he thinks and how he feels. Not many people can do that. Because that's, my friend, it's the American way. The American way is the reason why high school students, is the reason why I'm not going to say elementary school students, because they're not at that level, but it's the reason why high school and college students would leave classes and protest verbally, because they believe in the American ideals, that if you're not satisfied, if you're not happy about the way your government is running the affairs of the country, if you're not happy with the way your lives, the situation in your life is going, the way your environment is being run, your community is being run, you have the right to speak out. If you're not too okay with how people are being treated, imagine if the Second Amendment were not as powerful. The First Amendment was not a right. Imagine there wouldn't be no People with Disability Act in this country. If you study the history of people with disability in this country, you will be saddened about what happened to people with disability in this country. But there were good people that stood up and spoke out for people, individuals with disability. And today, those people who has disabilities are able to get the benefits and the help that they need, all because of the First Amendment. They saw something wrong and they spoke up against it. Even if they went to court, they knew that they had the truth on their side. And always, in the case of defamation of character, in the case of libel, these cases, once you have the truth, you will win. The truth has always won. Just like in the case of John Peter Zenger, 1735, against the colonial governor of New York, or the crown, So it's the same today. So if someone is going to take you to court because you said something about them that they think that you can't prove it and you have to prove, you'll win. Because anyone can sue you. Anyone can sue you for saying something they think that is not true about their character. But if you go to court and you can prove it, maybe. You understand? So I'm doing this video to talk about, like, why we shouldn't be afraid to speak out. Why we shouldn't be afraid to say the things that we feel, the way we feel about them, and to speak out for the vulnerable in our societies, and to speak out for those people who don't have voices. We should never. That's not the American spirit. It's not even the American way. Because imagine if people like Martin Luther King, because I'm not going to say he was the main architect, there are others before him. But those people that came before him, they laid the foundation for what became the civil rights movement. Even though the civil rights movement has started long since. But he came and then took it all the way. And I can tell you it's still going on today. There are numerous people in our community, activists that are in our various communities that are speaking up every day in this country. And guess what? What protects them is the First Amendment. And that's the reason why no matter what they do, whoever those people that are trying to erode your right to speak, to free speech or freedom of speech, or the First Amendment, no matter what they do, they can't win. Because there are countless numbers of people that came along the way. These are ancestors that laid the foundation, not just by talking, but they lay their life down so that you can have that right to speak your mind however way you want to. Even if your speech is hateful, as long as it's not inciting violence, you have the right to say so. And that, my friend, is the American way. The American way is that. That's why even me and my kids, I don't stop them from speaking up their mind. I don't stop them from saying what they want to say. I I may listen to it, and if I think they're not right, we debate. I debate with them. I encourage them to debate because when I see children, young as my kids, out in the street protesting for something they believe to be wrong against another place, another people, or even in their own communities in this country, that makes me feel great that as young as they are, they are thinking about others. They are showing empathy and love towards others and speaking up for them where they see injustice being done. It just showed that their future is going to be great, and that's what America is always. I remember me when I first came here. Yeah, it was almost as you had to know it, that you stand up for others. You stand up for people who can speak for themselves. So when I come on my channel something, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm speaking out for people who can speak. Because once upon a time, I was in that situation, and someone all the way in Canada saw what was happening in my country and say, something must be the fuel, the fueling this war, all of the killings, and something must be done to stop it. And in order to stop it, we must look at the diamonds, the illicit diamonds. And then that's where the term came from, blood diamonds. Had he not spoken on our behalf, maybe I may not be here by now. And countless numbers of people that find themselves in that situation would have been around today. But it was one man in Canada, I don't remember his name, that stood up for people he probably never met, but maybe read about, and said, this is the reason why the war is raging in that country. We need to do something about blood diamonds. Yes. So you always speak out. Those little things that you would do, you may think it's nothing. Speaking up for injustice. As Martin Luther King said, injustice here is injustice everywhere. He said, in one place is injustice everywhere. So when you see something that's happening, it may not be happening to your immediate family. It may not be happening to your surroundings, your community, or your country, or your state. But guess what? If it's happening somewhere in other places around the world, if you have the opportunity, do something. My heart goes out to all these people that put not just their livelihood, they put their lives on the line for others. That's the true teachings of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, aka Jesus Christ, that we are supposed to be the light for others. It's a basic thing. It's a basic thing to do, to stand up for people who are oppressed, people who can speak out for themselves, people who don't have the platform. Do that. It may not pay you, It may not gain you the kind of support you need, but at the end of the day, you said what's on your mind. And let me tell you, all those people that encounter the truth, their life has never been the same. But the truth will always win, even when evil people try to cover it or try to malign it, try to sideline the truth. The truth has always won. And this is historical. The truth will never be hidden in the darkness. And only you, my friends, can bring out the truth to the world. Your ancestors done it, and they were called all sort of names. Some were even destroyed. Some had to leave their own country, especially this country, to flee into other countries because of the truth. But over and over, America has always remained the bastion, or the place where the First Amendment lives. You understand? And I think the day America is silenced, the whole world is silenced. Because they are good people. Even among the evil, they are good people. There's always going to be good people that look at wrong and say wrong, and look at right and say right. And to those people, you are the hero for our generation. As I've always said in all of my videos, the greatest thing that could ever happen to anyone, my friends, it's not the day you were born, not the day you had your first car, the day you graduated from high school, college, the day you became a lawyer, doctor, businessman, whatever it is that you're working on, my friends. The greatest thing that could ever, ever, ever happen to you is the day you discover yourself. Because from that day on, everything will start to make sense to you, including standing up for those people who cannot speak for themselves. I want to say thanks to all of the people that watch my videos. I want to say thanks to those people who continue to support and subscribe to my channel. I thank you. I honor you. And I hope that you and your family are safe and in good health. Don't ever, ever stop speaking the truth. Say your mind. Speak your mind. Stand up for what you believe. And stand on principles. At the end of the day, you are righteous. History will always remember you. History never remembers cowards. Cowards are buried in the dustbin of history. Only those people that stands up for the truth and speak up when they notice injustice, as Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, W. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, and all these John Brown, all these people that stood up using the First Amendment to speak their mind and speak on things that they strongly believe to be wrong against people who didn't have the power and the strength to fight for themselves. You, my friend, will join that group, or will join them, and will be remembered. I want to say thank to you again. Thank you for all of your supports. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have question, comment, don't hesitate. All those people that have been commenting on my videos have been responding. I do my best to respond. So don't hesitate to comment if you can. Thank you and have a pleasant day.